going to be ushered into a new stage in Egypt's life.
So do you think that going after President Mubarak, freezing his assets, ordering him to stay in the country, do you think that's effective at this stage?
I think it sends a very important, apart from appeasing the masses, which I agree with you is very important, but it also sends a very important message to the remnants of the erstwhile ruling National Democratic Party that any trial to reassert their influence in the next period, especially in the next parliamentary elections, will not be tolerated, which is a very important message. So again, I'm trying to look forward beyond the appeasement of the masses to what would really affect the future of politics in this country. And the fact that we have had many financial players very much associated with the Mubarak's administration that are still very much active in society. Now, this move sends a very clear message to them that the era is over.
Okay, thank you very much for speaking to us. Tariq Osman, Egyptian writer, author of Egypt on the Brink. Let's now speak to Wael Nawara, who's the Secretary General of the Al-Had Party and a member of the National Association for Change. Thank you very much for speaking to us. So, does this move by the Prosecutor General in Egypt satisfy your demands?
Well, I think it sends a positive signal that nobody is above the law, that now they are getting to the heads of the regime. But I really wish to emphasize that with what we have seen in the past couple of weeks of indictments related to issues of economic corruption and financial corruption, I think we need now to start addressing issues of abuse of power, political corruption, judicial corruption. These issues which I think stole decades from the life of this nation. People like Zakaria Azmi, Fathi Srour, Safwat Sharif, Mufid Shihab, Mar'i, who, funny enough, is still a seated member of this cabinet. We would like to see those accused of abuse of power and political corruption being brought to trial even before those accused of financial corruption.
You're right in saying that so far all the charges leveled are financial, but it certainly seems that it's going to take time before we get to what you're asking, because the investigation is a long process, as you know, before these charges that are financial are even pursued and even have an outcome. It's going to take a long time.
Yes, I agree it will take a long time, but what I'm saying is the fears are from what we call the counter-revolution. And the counter-revolution isn't simply, a counter-demonstration or something like that, but it's basically, we feel that they are trying to regenerate or reproduce the old scene, maybe with new faces, maybe under new banners. Even some people are rumored to have NDP members forming a January 25th or January 25 party. All of these things, I think, are very disturbing, and we feel that without dissolving the state security apparatus, without bringing those responsible for the camel battle attacks and those accused of political corruption, such as the names I mentioned to you, in addition to a few members of the top leaders of the previous ruling party, I think that will send even a stronger signal that will comfort the people and say that there is no going back. We will not allow those corrupt people who stole 30 years from the life of the nation to come back to power.
All right, and what do you make, Mr. Nawara, of the proposed amendments to the Constitution? Do you think they constitute a genuine break from the past?
To be honest with you, I see this as a positive step. I see this as a first draft presented to the people to comment on. But what I really would like to see is to start seeing a dialogue between the Supreme Council of the Armed Forces and political forces with the National Association for Change, with Dr. Baradei, with Ayman Noor, with Hamdin Sabbahi, with people who have prepared drafts for a constitutional declaration as opposed to amending the existing constitution. We think the best way forward is to now have consensus around a constitutional declaration totally abolishing the old constitution. The constitutional declaration should outline the steps of the transition period. We think that calling for parliamentary elections first in a few months' time will have the danger of reproducing again and regenerating the old scene. So what we would like to see is to have some kind of an interim president elections or a presidential council within a few months, and then let the political process take time. Let the parties emerge and center themselves, reach voters, open offices, start attracting members, develop their agendas, get candidates for elections. That will take time. The logistics of democracy is far broader than just talking about, free and fair elections. Fair elections means that the players should have equal opportunities in the political process. And quite honestly, calling for parliamentary elections within a few months' time means that the only beneficiaries of that will be remnants of the old regime and, of course, the Muslim Brothers who were a part of, say, the other side of the coin of the regime.
Thank you very much for speaking to us. Wael Nawara, Secretary General of the Al-Had Party, joining us there on the line from Cairo. If you're just joining us on Al Jazeera, a recap now of our top stories this hour. Egypt's Prosecutor General has imposed a travel ban on former President Hosni Mubarak and his family, pending further investigations. He's also ordered a freeze on all their financial assets inside the country. Libya is top of the agenda at a meeting of the UN Human Rights Council in Geneva, attended by foreign ministers from around the world. The UN Human Rights Chief has called on world nations to back uprisings in the Arab world in, quote, words and deeds. Meanwhile, protesters in the Libyan city of Benghazi are preparing to help people still fighting troops loyal to the Muammar Gaddafi regime. It comes as new pictures of Gaddafi's son, Saif al-Islam, have emerged on the internet, and he is shown calling on supporters to arm themselves. We are joined here in the studio again with Ibrahim Sharkey from the Brookings Center here in Doha. We've been talking, of course, a lot about Egypt, about Libya, but the latest development coming from Egypt, where again the Prosecutor General has ordered a freeze on the assets of Muammar Gaddafi, Hosni Mubarak, the former president, inside the country. And we were talking about the significance of this. Just give us your thoughts about this. How do you think this is going to help in the transitional process that the country is undergoing right now?
Thank you. It's really important to recognize at this particular point that the challenges are enormous, and there is a huge list of things that we will have to go through until we are comfortable saying that the transition is complete or the transition has moved into serious stages. One important thing that I always realize about this revolution, that it's really not a revolution against the regime only, against Mubarak's regime only, but it's about the entire political system in Egypt. So it's really...
And this is why, in fact, we've seen continuing protests in Tahrir Square, even after Mubarak stepped down.
Exactly. So the moment that the people went to the streets and protested in millions, that was a clear expression as on the rejection of the regime, as well as the entire political system, and that includes the oppositions as well. The traditional, what I call it, the traditional oppositions, which is whether it's the Brotherhood or the New Wafd or At-Tajammu or any other political parties, because they two, failed to produce change within the past 30 years in order to satisfy the ordinary Egyptian citizens. So it's really a revolution against the entire system, and it's not fair to only expect that the military will fix everything in a month or in two.
So do you think that the people who've been protesting are being perhaps too impatient?
They would like to see some assurances, and today is a very strong gesture that
well, certainly this military council has made a lot of gestures in the last few weeks since Mubarak's resignation. There's been a number of gestures, the constitutional amendments they proposed on Sunday. Now this move to perhaps pursue Mubarak, in any case freezing his assets now.
Which is why it's important, in my view, is to understand this situation as, from a holistic point of view, from a systematic point of view, rather than it's the army that is expected to fix everything. First of all, this travel ban, it did not come from the army. It came from the prosecutor in Egypt, and so it's the process. The process entails many other players in the political system that equally have or share responsibility along with the army, because we have seen the traditional oppositions that they have been part of the Egyptian political scene, that they will have also to act responsibly in order to make the transition smoother to the next phase. And we have seen a new power emerging, the liberal movement that came as a result of this revolution. So it's really not all about the army, and I always try to emphasize this. Although the army shares big responsibility about leading the transition, but it's not only about the army. It's about the prosecutor. It's about the political parties, the traditional ones. It's about the new emerging parties. So there are serious challenges, and on top of these challenges is the practice of democracy. So even those liberals that started this revolution and started this Facebook movement, they themselves did not expect that they would get to this point. So it really started about in reaction to the situation in Tunisia and about the Facebook calls for revolution. But then there is a lot more than that.
Yeah, and a lot of actors, as you say.
Thank you. It's the practice of democracy, and treating the serious economic stagnation that the country is having are the next challenges that all parties will have to deal with.
Okay, thank you very much, Ibrahim Sharkey, Deputy Director of the Brookings Doha Center. Thank you.
Thank you.
Now, as Ibrahim just mentioned, protests have also been continuing in Tunisia despite the end of President Ben Ali's rule last month. The demonstrators have got their wish. Interim Prime Minister Mohamed Ghannouchi has stood down to be replaced by former government minister Al-Baiji Qaid Al-Sebsi. But as Nadeem Baba reports now, some may not see the change as enough.
A surprise announcement as Tunisia's interim president names a new prime minister.
At this critical moment, in order to maintain our national interest and to ensure that the state is up and running with all its institutions, I requested Mr. Baja Qaid Sibsi to assume the office of Prime Minister, and he thankfully accepted this responsibility.
Al-Baji Qaid Al-Sebsi is 84 and a former foreign minister. He served under Tunisia's post-independence leader Habib Bourguiba and under President Zine al-Abidine Ben Ali. His appointment came hours after interim Premier Mohamed Ghannouchi unexpectedly stepped down.
I am not prepared to be the person who takes decisions which result in the loss of life.
The move comes at a tense time for Tunisia. Sunday saw new clashes between protesters and security forces in Tunis. Several people have reportedly been killed on the streets of the capital since Friday. Mohamed Ghannouchi took over as premier on the 14th of January after President Ben Ali fled to Saudi Arabia following weeks of protests. Critics say that since the Jasmine Revolution, there's not been real reform, and Ghannouchi's replacement is unlikely to change that.
He's out of touch, he's out of time, he's belonging other generation. What the Tunisian youth need today, who someone will be able to represent them, who someone will be able to respond to their legitimate demands.
Mohamed Ghannouchi has repeated the government's pledge to hold elections by mid-July. But almost 200 people have been arrested over the weekend. It's not clear how far the new Prime Minister can quell the anger on the streets. Nadeem Barber, Al Jazeera.
And some breaking news now from Yemen, where President Ali Abdullah Saleh, who's also been facing protests and calls for his resignation, is due to announce a national unity government in the next 24 hours. Al Jazeera's Hashem Al-Bara is in Sana'a, the Yemeni capital, for us. Hashem, yet another concession from the Yemeni president.
Absolutely. It's a last-ditch effort to try